Good evening, students. Welcome to Dr. Kalam IAS Academy. Let us continue our discussion on the topics of ethics. Till recently, we have completed all the major conceptual topics in ethics. Afterwards, we are into some of the topics which are related to governance, public administration, polity, civil service, and so on. Dear students, it becomes very important for you to go through and have a clarity of some of the important concepts. If the concepts are clear, almost half of the work is done for you, dear students. Till now, we have covered logically administration, public administration, and bureaucracy. Today, we will discuss about government, governance, good governance, and ethical governance. Let me just flash through some of the slides, important slides, which we have already discussed. If you have any difficulty in understanding the things, you can ask me, right? Administration includes, importantly, two things. That is, one is cooperative group effort, means it is a group activity, and there is directed. These things are directed to common goals. These two are in administration. Administration is a broader concept and includes within itself organization and management. Dear students, administration, organization, management generally are used interchangeably in our colloquial word. But when you come to public administration, political science, management, there is some difference. Administration is one which determine the organization. It determine the organization and also determine the management. Organization is like a machine. Organization is like a machine. Management uses this machine. Management uses this machine to achieve the objectives, goals set by the administration. So, to conclude, what you can say, administration determines organization and also management. Organization acts as a machine. Management acts as an executive, executing the things which are set by the administration. Here, administration determines organization management at the same time. What they have to do, how have to do. Management is not given full freedom, has to whatever it wants. It is given little freedom within the boundaries set by the administration itself. In any big organization, if you think, they all invariably work on bureaucratic principles. Wherever there is a cooperative activity or there is a group activity, people cooperate, or you can get the works done if you have power. Any group activity, if you have power, you can make others listen. Here, if you have power, you can get what you want in spite of their resistance. There is also another way. What is that? That is authority. When your power is having legitimacy along with that, then it is said to be authority. So, to understand the cooperative group activity, it is better to know what is the basis of legitimacy. Based on the source of legitimacy, authority can be classified into three types. One is traditional, another is charismatic, and another is your legal rational authority. Legal rational authority is what is known as bureaucracy. In bureaucracy, we have got authority. It is not only legal, but also rational. Power is equal to, authority is equal to power plus legality, authority. If you add one more, that is rationality, it becomes your bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is equal to authority plus rationality. As you know, authority itself means power plus legality. It is legal. Bureaucracy is legal because authority is exercised by means of rules and procedures. Why bureaucracy is legal? Bureaucracy is legal because authority is exercised by means of rules and procedures. Here, the obedience is not to the person who holds the authority, but to the impersonal order, which is rational. These rules and regulations are impersonal. They are not related to any individual. And at the same time, these rules and regulations are rational. Why? These rules and regulations are designed to achieve certain specific ends. If you have got a rules, if you got a procedure, this is with the objective of achieving certain goals, certain specific end. Means there is logic, there is knowledge involved. So it is rational. Please understand this word, internalize this word, very, very important. It is legal because means are rules. It is rational because the means, that is the rules, are designed to achieve certain specific ends. So in bureaucracy, you find these structural properties. In any big organization, to run successfully, you need to have division of work, hierarchy, system of rules, rule specificity. Along with that, behavioral properties like rationality, impersonality, rule, orientation, neutrality are needed. Bureaucracy is one of the most superior concept. By this, there is a high degree of calculability. There is precision, there is accuracy. So that is the reason once, if anyone is ruled by bureaucracy, you cannot think of any other organization which gets satisfied. Coming to the criticisms, please give attention here. Very simple, in a very simple way I have made the slides. Bureaucracy, the things what we have read, along with the characteristics and the property. So here, what is that? We are more relying on rules and regulations. It is impersonal. Authority is impersonal. So in all these things, what we are doing, we are reducing or we are removing the human factor. There is no human touch. Say, for example, in traditional authority or in a charismatic authority, there was human touch. In charismatic authority, you are behind and you are obeying. You are obeying an authority because you feel that there is some supernatural power behind that person. In traditional authority, because of customs and traditions. But here it is the rules and regulations. By doing so, you are making the model a machine model, machine theory. So they say that bureaucracy is good for machines, not for humans. It is a theory fit for machines, not humans. Because it's over concerned with the formal structure of the organization and to the neglect of the human dimension. Human dimension is neglected and overemphasis is on the formal structure of the organization. Not only that, bureaucratic model is considered to be closed model as it does not take into account the details of interaction between the organization and the environment. So it is said to be cannot function in unsuitable environment, suitable for only repetitive routine work, and it is not suitable where innovation and creativity is involved. Next set of criticisms. Here, adherence to rules results in displacement of the goals, whereby an instrumental value becomes a terminal value. This develops rigidity, formalism, and ritualism. Here, what is the meaning of displacement of goals? Displacement means removing one and placing another. Here, what are displaced? Goals are displaced. As I told you, to achieve any end, to achieve any end or achieve any goal, we are using rules and procedures. Over a period of time, adherence to the rules. We are stressing more on the adherence of the rules, following the rules. These rules, which are acting as means to achieve the goal, to achieve the end, becomes the goal themselves. Adherence to the rules results in displacement of the goals, whereby instrumental value, means or rules, these instrumental rules are instruments, like a cycle which is used like an instrument. Guitar is an instrument. Like that, rules are also an instrument. They themselves become terminal value, ends, goals. Is this concept clear to you? So, in bureaucracy, to achieve any goal, as we have defined, it is rational. Why is that rational? Because rules and regulations are there to attain some goals. But over a period of time, overemphasis on these rules and following these rules becomes goal instead of means to attain the goals. Rigid rule orientation leads to trained incapacity. So when you are concentrating only on the rules, no flexibility, always your things are oriented towards rule, then by day in and day out practicing these things, you are training them for incapacity. You're destroying their innovation. Occupational psychosis. This means that the officials in bureaucracy do the same type of work for a long period of time that develops some preferences and antipathies. This is also known as professional deformation. See here, as we have said that here, obedience, we are giving obedience to some authority. This obedience is not to an individual person, but to an impersonal order. Impersonal order means, what is this impersonal order? This is your rules and procedures regulations. But what happens is, officials in bureaucracy do to the same type of work for a long time, same kind of work for 30 to 40 years. They do develop some preferences and antipathies. So instead of following these rules, procedures, these people, since they are working and doing the same thing, they develop their own preferences, their own way of working, which are not entirely same as rules and regulations. This can be known as professional deformation also, or occupational psychosis, where you are developing some preferences. So these are the major criticisms of bureaucracy, right? Then with respect to administration, we discussed that public administration refers to an administration in governmental setting. The focus is on executive branch, still the focus is on public bureaucracy. So let me just tell this one. Very important. What is public administration? Public administration refers to the executive branch of the government. This is the thing which has to be in your mind. If you want to elaborate, public administration, public administration refers to government administration. Government administration refers to all administration administering the affairs of all the three branches of the government. But specifically, the focus is on the executive branch of the government. In that also, the focus is on the public bureaucracy, or the focus is on the non-elected members of the bureaucracy. Public administration has two implications. One has a field of study and another has an activity of administering the government. Public administration has a field of study is very, very new. Very, very new. First, we had politics administration dichotomy as the scope of the thing. But now, public administration studies every aspect of governance since 1990s. Here, public administration is carried out the main intention of public interest. Whatever you do, there should be some public interest in this. So in this regard, we discussed the difference between private administration and also public administration. In the field of study, public administration came up with a small, like one period where they said that we want new public administration because old public administration is not working properly. It is not responding to the problems. In this regard, they say that new public administration should have relevance, values, social equity, change, and clientele focus. To achieve this, we have to have 4Ds: decentralization, democratization, delegation, and democratization. New public management is the order of the day. Now, the tools being used in the public administration are new public management tools. What is this? Here, how the things are done are taken from the private administration. It is giving more importance to economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. Previously, these were not taken care of. Previously, government thought doing the service is the only motive. With this, almost all the public sector undertakings were loss making. Now the concept has come. See, if you cannot run them successfully, please privatize. That is the reason why we have got privatization of public sector undertakings. If it is not economic efficient, then disinvest in that, privatize that one. Here, the argument behind this is you are using an instrument for collective problem solving, that is government. This instrument is not working. So it is the time to replace. What? With market. So we discussed the importance of public administration and also like the role of public administration. Always you have to say it is increasing, not decreasing, even after liberalization on these things. So having discussed all these things, we have discussed administration, public administration, and bureaucracy. Right? Here, next we'll discuss about government, governments, good governance, and ethical governance. Dear students, here let me make a point clear for you. Like I may not be repeating it again and again. UPSC has already asked a question as to what do you understand by governance, good governance, and ethical governance. Whatever I will be explaining with respect to these three terms, these three topics, these three ideas, everything will be from second year, except the concept of government, which is not there in second year. They have not explained. And also, we cannot explain the concept of governance without you understanding the concept of government. With this, I'll just include some things with respect to the state concept also. In general parlance, we use the term state synonymous or interchangeably with government. But when you think of public administration, political science, or anything in disciplines, in fact, the term state is used to differentiate the government. We'll look into those things. With respect to governance, dear students, understanding the concept of governance becomes very important. Please give due attention. Please give due attention. If you are concentrate, you will get the full clarity as to what is governance. This concept has not been explained anyway because this is a very, very new concept, diverse concept. You need a lot of energy, maturity to understand. See, in preliminary things, Indian polity and governance they have given. So you need to know what is governance. If you take the main syllabus, paper 3, that is your general studies 2 paper. Syllabus starts with the topic governance, constitution, polity, social justice, and international relations. Especially in the last fag end, you are given these things. All these things are related to governance. These are the things which are not touched by many. Even the people who teach, they have not been touching these things in detail. Just giving the dictionary meaning of these things. The applied part they are not doing. That has to be done if you want to get this. Then if you come to our syllabus, where is government present? We can see that in chapter number 6, they have ethical concerns and dilemmas in government. So in government, what are the ethical concerns and dilemmas? In chapter number 7, which is property in governance, you have got information sharing and transparency in government. These are the two areas where the term government is used in your syllabus. But when you go to the topic of governance, it is being used prevalently. Now, in fact, in political science, public administration, polity everywhere, the concept of governance has encompassed, subsumed all the things related to polity, everything. So governance includes your government, polity, non-governmental organization, all these things. So often you find governance everywhere, like increasing efficiency in governance, corruption in governance. They're not talking about government now. They're not talking about polity now. They're talking about governance. Everywhere you go at the international level, national level, governance has become a buzzword. This is in fact very, very new term. Till recently, we are giving more importance to government or the polity. Those terms are used more often. The term governance is used more oftenly in your syllabus. Ethics is the term which has been used like nearly 10 times. Afterwards, it is in fact the term governance, which is being used more, many times. Emotional intelligence, concepts, their utilities and application in administration and also governance. In chapter number 6, accountability and ethical governance. Also, strengthening the ethical and moral values in governance, corporate governance, the last chapter, philosophical basis of the governance. These are the areas where you find the term governance used. And there is only one place where they have used ethical governance, that is accountability and ethical governance. Today, we'll discuss all these things one by one in a systematic way. Government simply refers to the system of governing a country. So, government refers to a system or a group of people governing the country. Very, very common sense. Say, for example, India is a country. If it is ruled by a system or by a group, then we call that as a government. Means here are the people who are governing the country. If we go further, government consists of legislature, executive, judiciary. Don't you feel these are the three branches of the government which are governing the country? Because all the powers needed to govern a country, an organization, a society is being divided into three parts. This is our country, India. To run India, to govern India, we need some power. This power is divided among the legislature, executive, and the judiciary. So government consists of legislature, executive, and judiciary. This is the one which you have to emphasize. It doesn't mean only the executive. People always think that it consists of only executive. No. But since it is an act of governing and executive is a person who will be executing the things. Since any act in governing a country is executed by the executive, executive is the face of the government. Executive is the face of the government. For a common man sees the executive. So it is sometimes used as synonymously to the executive branch of the government. So government sometimes is used equating to the executive branch. Why? Executive is the face of the government. He is the person who is executing the legislature. He is the one who is implementing the judicial things. By all these things, in many cases, we often see executive as the government. But in reality, government consists of all the three branches. Here, as we have studied, it consists of three important branches. Why? This is known as separation of powers. Government is divided into different branches, each with separate independent powers and responsibilities, so that the powers of one branch is not in conflict with those of the other branches. Legislature is independent in its own sphere. The executive is independent in its own sphere. And also the judiciary is independent in its own sphere. At the same time, there is a very, very important concept, dear students: authority and responsibility. Whenever you are having authority, there is a corresponding responsibility. Think of any situation. Say, for example, children. Parents have authority. Parents have authority. The children obey to the authority of their parents. At the same time, your parents also have responsibility. Authority without responsibility. What happens, my dear students? On the other hand, only responsibility, no authority. You have got only responsibility. You have got the responsibility of looking into, taking care of the children, but you don't have the authority even to scold them, even to tell them, use loud voice. For in any organization, whether it is formal or informal, authority and responsibility are together. They are coterminous. They are concurrent. They should be present together. If they are not present, then it becomes meaningless. Here, because of the separations of power, we are able to prevent the concentration of the power. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Lord Acton, he says that Power corrupts, a very, very famous line. Power corrupts means if you are giving power to someone, it corrupts, means he is using like perfectly, it will corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, means if you are giving full power to an individual, then definitely absolute power is there, means absolutely there will be corruption. So to check that, we have got checks and balances. Each branch has power to limit or check the other two, which creates a balance between the three separate branches of the government. This principle induces one branch to prevent either of the other branches from becoming supreme, thereby securing political liberty. So here, in case of monarch, all your legislature, judiciary, executive, everything is with the monarch itself. He is the one who is making laws. He is the one who is executing the laws. If there is anything, grievances, he is the one who is administering justice. But in our case, in government, one person will make law, legislature will make the laws, the policies. Executive will implement this. Executive will implement these policies. So, my dear students, see, you can see the thing. The person who is making laws is not having the power of executing these things. Means you think of a situation. There are three individuals. 1, 2, 3. One is just making laws, and another is just implementing laws. Another is redressal of the grievances. In these cases, you can see that here he is not having any power. He is just making laws. You are saying one person one is just saying what is good, what is bad. Society has to be like this. Number two, he is second one. He is just implementing what number one has said. Executive is implementing just what the legislature has said. On the other hand, your judiciary has nothing to do with the policies or its implementation or execution. It says if there is something wrong in these three things, that's it. So by this, the power is distributed among these things. To make the things clear, separation of powers. What does this mean? So forget all the things. If you got the confused, separation of powers means this is the thing which are given in NCERT. So this is the one which you have to internalize more, because UPSC is referring to these standard books. Separation of the powers. Each of the organ or branch of the government exercises different powers. Dear students, you should be able to put any concept in 1 or 2 lines. Engineering, many of you are from engineering. You should be able to put the meaning of engineering in 1 or 2 lines. My dear students, writing is the crystallized form of communication. Not like any word, any gesture or like that. In writing, it's very, very important that you express what you want to tell. That is possible when you have your own definitions. Separation of powers, you should have your own definitions, which consists of and which is referring to other definitions. Until and unless you don't get this capacity, until and unless you don't start getting your own definition, your preparation for mains is far, far behind. What is repo rate? What is reverse repo rate? You should be able to tell these things in your own word. Students, don't be afraid that you may miss some of the important things. It happens for everyone. What you need is only 50% of the mark. Don't worry. But don't try to reproduce as it is given by some individual. He might have used all the things, did all the miracles, played all the music, and he has come up with some definition. There is nothing hard and fast in social science that you have to reproduce the same. If you reproduce, it's well and good. It is not possible. Similarly, anything you come up with, what according to you this means, that conceptual clarity you should have. That one word, one line, definition kind of things you should have. What do you understand by separation of powers? Each branch of the government exercises different powers. This is known as separation of powers. You can elaborate. What are these different powers? Please internalize this one. Each branch of the government exercises different powers. This is known as separation of powers. Through separation of powers, each organ acts as a check on the other organs of the government, and this ensures balance of power between all three. Is it clear? What is separation of the power? How it is leading to checks and balances? Each branch of the government exercises different powers. This exercise of different powers by each branch, that is, through separation of powers, each organ acts as a check on the other organs of the government. And this ensures checks and balances. What is a check? It acts as a check on the other organs' powers. And this ensures balance of power between all these things. Say, for example, legislature. He can make only laws. But these laws will determine what the executive will do. So executive cannot do whatever he wants. Like that, there is checks and balance. So this slide is very, very important and meaningful, crystal clear, in fact. Like, I want to read it again. Separation of powers. Each organ or the branch of government exercises different powers. What do you understand by separation of powers? Each branch exercising different powers is known as separation of powers. Through separation of powers, each organ acts as a check. Each organ acts as a check on the other organs of the government. And this check ensures the balance of powers between all the three organs. This is it. Along with that, government also consists of other important things like your UPSC, your election commission. All these things are present in the constitution itself. So these also form the parts of government. Is it clear? Government consists of the three branches of the government and also many constitutional bodies. What do you understand by constitutional body? Number one, any body which gets mentioned in constitution. That is the major criteria. It is not necessary that constitution defines their powers, defines their responsibilities, defines their rules. No. If it just finds a mention in the constitution, then it becomes a constitutional body. If it defines the power, rules, regulations, all the aspects related to that, it's well and good. So these things I have explained. Now it is with respect to parallel government. Dear students, this is our India. Our Karnataka is here. So whenever this maps comes into your mind, always we feel that state government is a part of central government. State government is a part of central government. No, this is the wrong conception. Whenever it comes to government, you have to have two different things. That is, if this is the central government, India, this is your state government. Means here the constitution has given powers to the central government and the state government. Your state governments are not existing because of your central government. Central government is not giving any powers or anything. The powers what the states have is already given by the center. So dear students, here we have got dual polity. What do you understand by dual polity? Dual polity means existence of two parallel governments, one at the center and another at the state. Why we call this as a parallel governments? Because here the powers, the authority in their sphere is defined and given by the constitution. One is not dependent on the another for their powers, authority, how they have to work. Is it clear? Okay. So next another. By this time in my lectures, these things were conspicuous. By now, I think you have a fair idea of these things. Constitution. What is the constitution? Dear students, we have dealt this topic in depth just for your better understanding. Constitution is a law. Constitution is a supreme law. Constitution is the law of the land. Constitution is the mother law, is the basic law, is the foundation law. So Constitution is also a law. Any laws made in the country have to be within the framework of the Constitution. Any rules, they have to be within the framework of the law and also the Constitution. Constitution, who has provided the Constitution? People. People are sovereign. People are superior. Laws by your legislature. Rules by your executive. If there is anything ending with rules, environment rules means these are the rules made by your executive. Executive means Council of Minister, your Jagan, Yediyurappa, Modi ji. If there is anything which is ending with act, law, these are the things which are done by legislature. If there is anything present in the Constitution, then it becomes the Constitution. Rules cannot violate laws and Constitution. Laws cannot violate the Constitution. So this is the interlinking. Sorry. Government is an act of, governance is an act of collectively solving our problems. Very important. One more precise definition I gave you. Governance is an act of collectively solving our problem. Is an act of collective decision making. Governance is an act of collectively solving our problems, or governance is an act of collectively making the decision, or governance is an act of forming policies and implementation. Yes, students, please internalize. At the global level, at the global level, these are the three precise, accurate definitions which are available. Governance is the act of collectively solving our problems. You can say this, or you can say governance is the act of collectively making the decisions. The third way of saying is governance is the act of forming policies and implementing them. Policy formulation and implementation. These are the three dimensions in which all the definitions of government fall. These were the accurate things, and you please stick to these things. There's no need for you to go anywhere. Government is the instrument we use. The instrument is outdated and it is a time to remake it. We don't need more government. We need better government. To be precise, we need better governance. So, during 1990s, there was a great movement. There was a great shift. People were asking for the rollback of the government. They want liberalization, privatization, globalization, because government as an instrument of collective problem solving has failed. So they came up with the concept of governance. Governance is one of the most recent concepts. Very, very importantly, according to second ARC, in government, you have to have law of subsidiary. What is law of subsidiary? Subsidiary function. The meaning is something that is secondary importance or that functions in a supporting capacity. Second ARC says that in government, law of subsidiary should be followed. You might have heard the literal meaning subsidiary function. It is a subsidiary function, means it is of secondary importance. It is a byproduct. It is not the main thing. So what is this law of subsidiary? What is that which has to be given secondary importance here? In government functioning, there always has to be an important law, the law of subsidiarity. What does this mean? Law of subsidiarity is a law which has to be there in government functioning. Law of subsidiarity is not given by second ARC. It is second ARC is simply saying that this law of subsidiarity should be there in government working. What does this mean? The central idea of subsidiarity is that citizens are sovereigns and stakeholders in democracy are the final decision makers. Citizens are also the consumers of all the services provided by the city. Citizen, sovereign, consumer must exercise as much authority as practicable and delegate upward the rest of the functions which require economics of scale, technological and managerial capacity or collective amenities. So, dear students, here government should follow the law of subsidiarity. What does this mean? Let me tell the gist. Here, citizen should exercise maximum authority. The other structures of the government, the other structure, citizens should exercise maximum authority. Government should exercise only that authority which the citizen cannot do in a most efficient manner, or because of economics of scale, because of management constraint. They have to be delegated upwards to others. Are you getting me? Law of subsidiarity means citizens should exercise maximum authority. The government should exercise the least authority possible. Government should exercise those authorities which the citizen delegate because he cannot do. Say, for example, I am an individual. I should exercise maximum authority. If I can't do some things, I should delegate this to community, group of people. If this community also cannot do those things properly, then only it has to be delegated upward to your local government. If local government is also not capable of doing, delegate it to state government. If state government is also not capable of doing, delegate it to central government. So here there is upward delegation. Say, for example, implementation of rural development programs. Implementation of rural development programs, local self-governing bodies are the correct things. So is a perfect, they can do these things in a better way. So that has to be done by the rural self-government. On the other hand, defense, individual cannot, community cannot, local cannot, state cannot. It has to be given to the central government. Subsidiarity, the law of subsidiarity in government means that citizens are sovereign. Citizens are sovereign. All others in government are dependent. Citizens are at the top. Citizens are at the apex. They are the only people who are sovereign. In a democracy, only citizens are sovereign and the stakeholders in the democracy. And they are the final decision maker, not your legislature, executive, or anyone. In a democracy, citizens are sovereign and they are the final decision makers. Citizens at the same time also consumer of all the services provided by the state. See here the irony. Citizen is a sovereign, is all powerful and is the final decision maker. In another direction, citizen is also a consumer. He is consuming the services provided by the state. So here you have got a citizen who is sovereign and also consumer. This citizen who is a consumer, who is sovereign, must exercise as much authority as practicably possible, as much authority as practicable. If it is practicable, he has to exercise all the authority by himself and delegate upward. I have given the figure, delegate upward the rest of the functions which require economics of scale, technology, managerial capacity, or collective amenities. As far as practical, citizens should exercise all the authority and delegate only those which he cannot do because of economic scale, technology, management capacity, or anything like that. Right? So here citizens should be given the authority to do anything which is practicable. So according to the Oxford Dictionary, this is also given the second ARC itself. Subsidiarity has a principle has a principle that a central authority should have subsidiary function. What do you understand by law of subsidiarity? Government should follow the law of subsidiarity means that a principle that the central authority should have a subsidiary secondary function performing only those tasks which cannot be performed at a more local level. This is the one very important you have to put in your answers. According to second ARC, government should follow the law of subsidiarity. Subsidiarity means the central government should have the subsidiary function, secondary functions, and central government should be performing only those which cannot be performed at a more local level. If they can be performed at more local level, center should not do that one. If military can be managed at the local level, it has to be given. Since it is not possible, we are not giving that. This is a very, very important slide which explains everything conceptually in a very, very clear way. Please concentrate. The principle of subsidiarity stipulates that functions shall be carried out closest to citizens at the smallest unit of governance possible and delegate upwards only when the local unit cannot perform the task. Same thing. Function shall be carried out closest to the citizens. Means if the citizen is capable of doing, it has to be given to him at the smallest unit of governance possible and delegate upwards only when the local unit cannot perform. If the local unit can perform, if your Gram Panchayat, if your Panchayat Raj can do that, that has to be given to that. Citizen delegates these functions, he cannot perform to the community. See here, delegate is very, very important. Delegate means ultimate authority and responsibility remains with the person who has delegated. Here, citizen is having the ultimate authority and responsibility. He is just delegating those functions he cannot perform to the community. Then functions that the community cannot discharge are passed on to the local government in the smaller tiers and so on. That is from smaller tier to the larger tiers, from local government to the state government, from the states to the union. Here, in this scheme, the citizen and the community are the center of the governance, are the center of the government. In place of the traditional hierarchy, there will be ever enlarging concentric circles of government, and the delegation is outward depending upon the necessity. Previously, we had a hierarchical structure. This was the thing. Here, you had the central government at the top. In the middle, you had got state government. At the bottom, you had the local government. So there was a rigid hierarchy. Now, in this should not be there. This hierarchy should not be there. In the law of subsidiarity, there will be ever enlarging concentric circles of government. Will be concentric circles of the government. Delegation is outward depending upon the necessity. So, second axis says that this should be the way in which local government, state government, central government, there should be concentric and ever enlarging circles. Right? I hope by now the law of subsidiarity is clear. It simply says that in a democracy, who is having maximum power? Who is sovereign? It is the citizens. Citizens should have all the authority. Citizens should exercise all the authority possible. If citizen is not possible, is not able to do certain work, he has to delegate that work to the next level, like community. If the community cannot, then to the panchayat raj, then to the state, then to the center. In this way, it has to be concentric circles, not the hierarchical things which were present in a previous traditional way. Right? Moving forward, an important thing with respect to state, dear students, there is no till recently in your general studies, nowhere for the last 30-40 years, they nowhere asked the difference between state, government, or governments. They have not asked. In fact, in many cases, in general reading, government is used interchangeably with the state. But in fact, this is not the correct thing. Government is a group of people or a system which is governing a country, governing a region. State, on the other hand, refers to the political institution that represents sovereign people who occupy definite territory. See here, this is the definition which is given in your NCERT. This is one of the most important, simple, concrete, and most authentic definitions. So what does state refers to? State refers to number one, it refers to political institution. State refers to political institution. This political institution is represented by people. These people are sovereign, not anyone. Only sovereign people are referred. And also they have definite territory. Right? Dear students, state refers to political institution. This political institution that is represented, that is made up of sovereign people, and also it has a definite territory. This is a thing, my dear students. See here, let me make a distinction between the government. Government is responsible for administering and enforcing the laws. The government can change with elections. Are you getting the things? Government is responsible for administering. Government means system or group of people who are governing or who are administering or enforcing the laws. Government can change with election. State, on the other hand, refers to political institutions that represent a sovereign people who occupy definite territory. So, dear students, state is permanent, government is not. That is the reason often you find in your fundamental rights, duties, they often say state, not government. They often don't use the term state, government. State refers to the political unit present, the political institution present. But all the political institutions cannot be equated to the state. If the political institution, say for example, there is a political institution, this political institution is represented by some group of people, say for example, some militia, militants, and also this is not having a definite boundary, then it cannot be said as state. any political institution which is represented by sovereign people, means people are having the highest power, highest authority, and a definite territory. So state is one which is permanent comparatively to the government. Is this clear? This is that was the NCERT definition. This is one of the most accepted definitions at the international level at the UN. What is this? According to this definition of state, state is one which has permanent population, defined territory, government, capacity to enter relation with other states. The state shall constitute a sole person in the eyes of international. According to your NCERT definition, state is equal to political institution represented by sovereign people and which have a definite territory. So in UN, they have accepted this. Most of the countries have accepted this definition. They have said that state is one which has a permanent population. Very easy to remember. Population, territory, and there is a government. And it has a capacity to enter into relations with other states. And also at the international level, it is a sole person. Indian state means it is a sole person. If China want to have some engagement, it is have with the Indian state. So dear students, government is a smaller term. State is a broader term. State is permanent. Government is not that permanent because every election change of government, right? Permanent population, territory, government, capacity to enter into relations with other states. These are the most prevalent definitions of the state. Okay. Moving forward is with respect to governance. Governance according to second IRC. Governance is primarily series of service operations with the ultimate objective of maximizing the citizens' welfare. Please go through this definition. Very, very important. Excuse me. Governance. Till now, I have given 3 definitions of governance. Governance is an act of collectively solving the problems, collective problem solving. Governance is an act of collective decision making. Government is a process of formulation of policy and implementation of policy. In all these definitions, if you elaborate, you will get the complete meaning of government. The same. See, all these things means the same, my dear students. Let me reiterate this. Governance is an act of collective problem solving. How you are collectively solving the problems? How you are collectively making the decisions? How you are making the policies and how you are implementing these policies? They all means the same. Added to this, you can take one more important definition if you want. That is given by the second IRC. What is that? Governance is primarily series of service operations with the ultimate objective of maximizing the citizens' welfare. Here, second ARC is defining governance as anything which maximizes citizens' welfare. Please keep this in mind. Maximizing citizens' welfare. Anything which is maximizing citizens' welfare, you can call that as governance. Primarily series of service operations with the ultimate objective of maximizing the citizens' welfare. If you can remember this definition, that will be the ultimate, because our definition, our concept should be contextual. Our country, in our country, the apex, the peak of reforms, peak of the concepts is second ARC. Whatever second ARC says, you can take it, those things for granted. This is according to our country. If you find this definition a little lengthy, you can just use this. There's nothing wrong and it will be still concrete. What do you understand by governance? Governance means maximizing citizens' welfare. You please quote second ARC. Anything you do with the ultimate objective of maximizing the citizens' welfare is governance. Dear students, give or take examples of anything which maximizes the citizens' welfare. Say, for example, you're putting a road, you're coming up with some new laws or anything. In all these cases, if it is leading to maximizing the welfare of the citizens, then it forms the part of governance. If some individual, they are giving money to the poor, they are giving services to the poor, by this the welfare of the people is increasing, means they are also the part of governance. Let me once again clarify the concept of governance. Governance is a very, very broad, all-encompassing concept. Anything done to maximize the welfare of the citizens, you can call that as governance. In that, government is only a part. Government is only a part. Your three organs. Non-governmental organizations are also there. It is also a part of governance. This is your governance. Private organizations, this is also governance. International organizations, these are also part of governance. Local governance is also part of governance. Civil society is also part of governance. Public-private interactions also part of governance. Anything which maximizes the citizen welfare. See, this is the definition, like as it is given by the second ARC. If you find it difficult for you to remember, just you can some of these things, because you are not losing anything. Even if some content is lost, doesn't matter. Anything which is maximizing the citizen welfare, anything done with the objective, anything done with the ultimate objective of maximizing the citizen welfare constitutes governance. Is this concept clear to you? Governance is an all-encompassing thing. Your political institutions, polity, government, international organization, non-governmental organization, private organization, civil society, local government, everything is inside the government if it is affecting the welfare of the people. So, dear students, once again I reiterate, for you The other things which I'll be explaining you will be in addition. But what you have to internalize the concept of governance is not more than what I have already told. Governance can be defined as the act of collective problem solving, collective decision making. Governance is a process of formulation of policy and implementation of policy, or you can say that anything done with the objective of maximizing citizens' welfare. See, with respect to the last one, you have to quote second ARC because it is one of the latest definitions given. If you just quote this definition, nobody can object. According to second ARC, governance refers to anything done with the ultimate objective of maximizing citizens' benefit. My dear students, in all these cases, don't think that they are having different meaning. They all mean the same. The way of telling is different. Okay. According to Human Development Report, governance entails the exercise of power or authority to manage the country's resources and affairs. According to Human Development Report, governance refers to the exercise of power or authority. Power or authority may in all the spheres, like political, economic, administrative, or any other way to manage the country's resources and affairs. Here, they are giving more importance to power and authority. Governance refers to the power and authority which is being employed to manage the country's resources and affairs, according to human rights. According to UNDP, one of the most comprehensive definitions, according to this definition, government encompasses mechanisms, processes, institutions through which collective decisions are made and implemented. Collective decisions are made and implemented. Citizens groups and communities pursue their vision, articulate their interest, exercise their legal rights, meet their obligations, and mediate their differences. Dear students, here too, this is like still I remember some 15, 20 years back when I was studying, I tried to remember this. And in fact, many times I like beheaded this, but I used to forget. So my dear students, you too don't make that mistake. This is one of the mistakes done by most people. Just take the gist. In that, if you forget something, it doesn't matter. Because if you try to remember these things as it is, at the end, the results will be that you won't be able to reproduce the thing. This is one of the earliest definitions. Here, you can see that according to UNDP, governance comprises of all the mechanisms, processes, and institutions. Means is just putting everything, mechanisms, processes, institutions, through which collective decisions are made and implemented. The same, like you can say, I said, collective decision making or policy making and their implementation. It includes all the mechanisms, all the processes, and all the institutions which are involved in collective decision making and which are involved in implementation. Mean to say that if private organization is involved in implementation, it also forms a part of government. If there is a process, if there is a mechanism Say, for example, we have got parliamentary form of government where we have got election every 5 years. It is the one of the mechanism process through which collective decisions are made. So it also forms part of governments. Another part, citizens, groups, and communities pursue their vision, articulate their interests, exercise their legal rights, meet their obligation, and mediate their differences. Here, they're just giving like all the areas. An individual, he has got some vision. Let him pursue his vision. He can articulate his interests. He has got rights. He has got some duties, obligations. And if there is any difference of opinion, there are ways for arbitrating the things, mediating the differences. All this includes governance. So here, if possible, do remember this one. What is the key thing here? Here you can just understand the scope here. How they are referring to everything. They are referring to mechanisms, processes, institutions. All these things with respect to number one, collective decision making and their implementation. Just how the decisions are made, how the policies are made, how they are implemented, all these people. And everything is that is needed for citizens, groups, and communities to pursue their vision, what they think. Are they having that thing? Articulate their interests, exercising their leads, meeting, and also following their obligations, duties. Everything is present in governance. That is the meaning. Next, according to Justice Y.K. Sabharwal, governance simply means the process of decision making and the process by which these decisions are implemented. Simple. The same thing. How the policy, decision making means here policy, and how they are implemented. The act of governance involves interface through which citizens mediate and interact with the state. The same definition. According to the 10th plan, here governance leads to the management of all the processes that in a society define the environment which permits and enables individuals to rise their capacity levels on one hand and provide opportunity to realize their potential and enlarge the set of available choices on the other. So here, 10th 5-year plan document is explaining what governance means. According to it, governance relate to the management of all the processes, everything which happens in any society. Define the environment which permits and enables individuals to rise their capability level. On one hand, they are providing such an environment in which you can rise your capabilities, not satisfying your things. You want to rise your capabilities, provide opportunity to realize their potential and enlarge the set of available choices. Already you have got choice, you have got freedom. Still, it is giving opportunity to realize your potential and enlarge those things. These are the main important things according to the 10th 5-year plan document. 10th 5-year document explicitly says that governments covers state, civil society, and market. Means it is all encompassing. Private, civil society, state, all are present. Right? So, problems of governance. My dear students, let me ask you if you have got any doubt with respect to the concepts I have explained. I don't want to make things monotonous. So if you have got any doubt, let me hear from you.
Yes, sir.
Excuse
Sir,
me. Please go ahead.
sir, in our answers related to what is governance, we can just write any one definition, sir.
Anyone is more than sufficient.
Okay, sir. Sir, I think, sir, the definition which is given by the second ARC is more suitable, sir. I think, sir, because you said that the whole of the ethics syllabus has been taken from the second ARC. So I think
Yes,
writing the
yes, that's true. Definitely, like whatever second ARC says, if you mention that content, if not as it is, and just in brackets or somewhere you say according to second ARC, that will be having maximum weightage. Maximum weightage, it will be contextual, it will be like icing on the cake instead of you referring all international organizations, definitions, because they have formed their things taking into other criterias at the world level. But when it comes to India, it has to be very contextual. So second ARC definition is the ultimate one. If you can reproduce, just one line reproduce, otherwise you just say anything which is leading to maximizing citizen welfare. Just remember the keyword citizen welfare. Anything leading to series of service of operations which is done with the ultimate objective of maximizing citizen welfare, then you can say that as a governance. That will be the best one.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, governance. Let us move forward. Here, second ARC says that in governance, we have got many problems. What are these problems in governance? In governance, problems in governance. What do you understand by this? Means there are some problems in the way of maximizing citizens' welfare. There are some problems in collective decision making and implementation. There are some problems in policy making and implementation. That's the way you have to decipher the things. So, what are the problems in governance? Means it implies these things. According to second ARC, there are some problems in governance in maximizing the citizens' welfare. What are these? So they are, according to second ARC, first governance problem is adaptation. He beautifully gives the example of cockroach and dinosaurs. Dinosaurs and cockroach. Dinosaurs and cockroaches were living in the same time. Cockroach was able to adapt to the changing circumstances. On the other hand, dinosaurs did not. Dinosaurs perished. In the same way, there should be adaptation to the changing things. Say, for example, if you go to 20 or 30 years back, 20 or 30 years back, we were not having computers, latest technology we were not having, satellite communication, all these things were not that developed. But we have now, we have to use those things. There are changing circumstances. Technology is bringing a lot of changes. Land, labor, capital, enterprises. These are the factors of production till recently. Now technology has been added, and there are many other problems which we're facing day by day. All these things have to be taken care. We have to realize that government monopoly has gone. Second ARC says the same word. I'm not using a single word extra here. Government monopoly is gone. It cannot be any more available. So we must build 21st century Indian governance. We have to shake the orthodoxy. First governance problem is adaptation. We fail to adopt. We know there are number of animals like dinosaurs. Dinosaurs disappeared thousands of years back, but the cockroach which was there even now survives because it has the sense of adaptation. We should live like cockroaches so far as the principle of adaptation is concerned. To the changing circumstances, to the changing needs, government should adapt. Not only the things, with respect to values, with respect to attitude. What exactly meant by equality 100 years back is not the same as equality which is now. The so-called most liberal constitution, most fair constitution, that is the American Constitution, which they say, was not truly representative, because in that women representation was zero. In that the Black Americans representation was zero. Things are changing because at that time equality meant even the exclusion of these people. Concepts are changing, so the governments has to change accordingly. If we won't change, like dinosaurs, we may perish. Let me read this, very important. We have to realize that government monopoly has gone. Previously, government was everywhere. Watch, government watch. Insecticide, pesticide, machines, organizations, everywhere government. This monopoly has gone. It cannot be any more available in future. The monopoly which the state with the government used to enjoy won't be. We should build 21st century Indian governments. We should have stake. We have to shake the orthodoxy, all these things which are present. If we fail to adapt, we will face a lot of problems. It will be to the very survival of the things. We should adapt to the changes taking place around us, fitting traditional vertical system to the new challenges of globalization and devolution, and integrating the new horizontal system through the traditional vertical ones. Now, because of information technology, now the system is horizontal. To take any example, now a simple by one tweet, a person can reach millions. By one message, you can reach many. Previously, it was not there. Now this is horizontal. Now what we have, horizontal system. Traditionally, say for example, PM has to say this to ministers, ministers from them, like that. There was vertical system which was present in the 21st century. So second ARC says that the vertical system which was present previously, we have to combine with the horizontal system which is present now. We should adapt to the changes taking place around us, fitting traditional vertical system to the new challenges of globalization and devolution, and integrating the new horizontal system to the traditional vertical ones. Then the second most important problem in governance is the problem of capacity. Enhancing government's ability in transformed environment. Increasingly, we should integrate with the world governance. The public value management system, which have to be modified. The public managers create public value, that becomes very important. The new public service ethos, efficiency, accountability, equality is what is required. Strong cadre of technocrats, economists, professionals will have to get into the administrative process. First governance problem is adaptation. Second is capacity. So government also should have the capacity. Government should also have the capacity. For this, there is a need of a strong cadre of technocrats, economists, professionals. They all have to come into administrative process. It is often said that if there is a bad governance, in a democracy, what is the main reason? The main reason is good people, noble people not entering to the government. If good people are not entering the government, definitely bad will be entering. It is a punishment for not entering. So, my dear students, democracy means rule of people. So, good people have to enter. Then, if good people are in the government, definitely their rule will be good. What happens if the government is ruled by bad? If we have today, if the governance is very, very poor, why? Because why? Bad people are ruling. Don't you feel like that? Say, for example, there are many CMs, many chief ministers who have gone to jail, but still we want to make them as CMs. There are many people against whom there are like dozens of cases. Still, we want to elect them as things. The main reason why we have got bad governance is good people are not entering into governance, my dear students. Good people would have entered, then there would have been no problem at all. Abhijit, please mute your phone. Abhijit, please mute your phone. So increasingly, we should integrate with the word governance. The public value management system will have to be modified. Public managers create public value, that become very important. The new public service ethos, efficiency, accountability, equality is what is required. The new public service values, what are there? Efficiency, government, you have to have efficiency. People who are working should be accountable. There should be equity. When you have these things, the government will be capable. So it will be having the capacity. First is adoption, second is capacity. Government should have the capacity and also the adaptability. These are the problems according to second years. Then second RC also has added, these are very, very important. Please note these things. Citizen-centric government, second RC report. It says that there are many things needed to make the government citizen-centric. There are many things which you have to do to make the government citizen-centric. So all these things and many more we'll discuss tomorrow, because I feel like you might be monotonous. Okay, I'll take up this topic tomorrow. Let us discuss yesterday's class, case study problem. In this case study, I took up one UPSC question paper, one UPSC question. In that, to make the things clear, to make the things appealing to you, I have given the parallels also. See, please concentrate here. I will explain the things. You have think that you have cleared some exam and you are there as an assistant. You are there as an assistant to a director. This director is like five-star person in the office. But when you go home, you somehow come to know and think that now, because like you have not seen this person beating his wife, but you have heard and you have also heard when you went to his house, a woman was crying his wife. So in this regard, what you will do? This was a UPSC question. Here, what you have to take into consideration or what UPSC is looking is, as an individual or as a person, this person is very good. See, you are an assistant to the director. This is the only association you have. But at home, he is involved in domestic violence. Wife is not well educated, soft nature. You come to know this, what will you do? What will you do in this regard? So I want more options. Then what exactly you do? Clear?
First, we'll come to know, I'll confirm whether this is true, if he's really doing it against his wife. And if it gets confirmed, maybe I'll report it to the concerned authorities.
Okay. Confirm. Second is concerned authorities. Okay. Next. Like who are the concerned authorities? We'll discuss that. Any other thing from anyone?
Sir. Hello, sir.
Please.
Sir, first of all, in this present case, sir, since I am holding a very responsible position, so I can't act on my impulses. So first of all, I will have to confirm regarding these cases. And regarding these cases, this often these quarrels happen between these couples, and I don't think it's very right for a third person to interfere in their personal matters. Maybe, and in this case also, as you have mentioned, so we don't have the perfect evidence to take charges upon this senior official that he's actually harming his wife. And even if I complain to a superior authority, they won't be taking the actions because they are not having any evidence. And she may have cried because of some other reasons as well. And if he is really he's like a psychopath, or he's actually harming his wife, then actually I will have to have a talk with him regarding actually knowing what the problem is. And if possible, I will also ask him to have a counseling session, whether with the both the couples. So I think that will be also a good position. Then also some.
Okay, nice. Nice. But is it practicable? You are very junior. Can you ask for counseling to a director where there is a lot of hierarchy? You are a very young person.
Yes, no, sir, it's not possible, sir. And also, since I'm having
your voice is not that audible. Keep the phone near to your mouth. Okay, good, well tried. Let me once again make the things clear for you. Let me remove some of the obstructions here. See here, take for granted that your senior is beating his wife. Take for granted. We'll discuss that. You come to know that he is beating his wife, but you have not seen. Neighbors are saying, and your staff is also saying the same. Okay, we'll take for granted that he is beating your wife. What will you do? Okay, let me make the question little difficult. Say I took and I explained the same thing yesterday. Say I am Raghu. I am working in Dr. Kalam IAS Academy. Now you have entered the academy, and you, after seeing the teaching, all these things, you feel that Raghu is a person who can get you first rank. Who can get you first rank. So in the institution, you have paid some X amount of money for this. He is doing the justice. In fact, you feel that he is the number one. And you also feel that if his guidance is given for another 1 year, you will definitely get first rank. But because of this lockdown or something, when you went to his house, you came to know that he is involved in domestic violence. He is beating his wife. What will you do? This is a situation. He is helping you a lot. Even because of the lockdown, he called you to discuss some important things because you are going for some interview or anything like that. This is the same scenario. In the institution, what all you need is providing to get first rank. Even he is going one step ahead, taking extra mile. This is his personal thing. What they are asking is, what is the crux of this question? This kind, the variety, the kind is important. A person X is very good in his professional or public life. The same person is very bad in his personal life. You come to know this, then what will you do?
So here basically we are obedient only to your teaching. We are not obedient to you as a person.
Okay.
So if you are doing something wrong, we will. We can report it. We should
Yes,
report
that
it.
is true. The thing what the question is trying to say is, say you are an assistant. You are an assistant to the director. Everything, your progress in the office depends on the director. So you are subordinate to the director only in the official capacity. And also, it doesn't give any right for you to interfere in his personal things also. Don't you feel like that? Say, for example, in any house, say, for example, there is one friend of you. He's a very good friend. Somehow, because of some reason, you go to his house. In his house, you find that his father or someone is involved in domestic violence. Then will you suddenly jump into that situation and give complaint to women organizations? Here, there is one important thing. If you do something forcibly, or if you have asked this director also, he is not cooperating. He may not train you. He is training in a very good way. He may stop training you. Not only that, you are a subordinate to him in the office. What will you do in this situation? Here, very important thing, as I told you, it's not the matter of you solving the things with one. There is nothing like one good answer for this. What is the best thing is, how many options, how many ways you are looking to these things. Say, for example, here, let me give some like brief things. Say, for example, he's involved in domestic violence. As you said, after confirming, going to women organizations, going to police station, going to some non-governmental organization, and as some of you have mentioned, like asking him for counseling, or anonymously you're sending someone, or anonymously reporting that in the media. This can go anyway. So what are the options available with you?
We can ask his wife itself to go and give a complaint if she's not aware of all the other alternatives.
But not accessible. How can you have the access to your director of wife? Say if you are a lady, someone okay. He's a boy here. So how can he interact with the thing? What will you do? This is the same question.
Sir, if it is about having writing many options in this particular case studies, then the first thing that we can do is we can
No.
just
Okay. Let me. Sorry for interrupting. It's not about writing the options. It is about writing the correct options. To come to a correct option, we should have more options. That is what I am saying. So what I am telling you is come up with more options. Among those options, we will decide what is correct. So that was the misunderstanding. Case studies are not about giving maximum options. No, they are more about giving a good option where you are showing your attitude, where you are showing your decision making skills. To develop that, you have to come up with more number of options. When you try to come up with more number of options, your brain will work. There will be brainstorming. There will be new ways. That is the one which I am asking. So give more number of options. What you will do in this one? So the option was also there, asking the wife, okay, counseling is also over, women organization over, telling the police is over. Then
I could also ignore the this whole thing. So
yes, very good. This is also, I'm asking for options. I'm not judging your ethicality or attitude or values. Now what I'm saying is your options. Yes, that is one of the good, in fact. See, just because you are someone's student or someone is your guru, it doesn't mean that you can interfere in others' personal life. That is good enough. Any other?
and also, so we can't just frame the boss to be guilty just because of the because of others talking, sir, because there could be also situations, sir, because maybe he may be honest person, and maybe this wife may be regularly demanding things from him which he may not be able to provide with his limited salary. So it may also lead to some conflict in the family, and maybe since due to this conflict, then some quarrels may have raised, and she might have been crying due to that. So, and it may not be a physical abuse. So, and since we are not having proper evidence on physical evidence, we can't just approach any authority to take an action against him. So
Very good, very good. So in all the case studies, the students, they often give this gray area. Means what they do is, uh, let me give the example. Say for example, there is a office. There is one person, X. This X person is making loose comments on women. Is making loose comments on women. So this you have heard. This they will give in the statement. Afterwards, already you are fixed in the mind. You are fixed that this person is making loose comments. One day, a lady comes to you and says that he is involved in harassment. So here you cannot jump to the conclusion that he has been harassing. You have to just verify that. So as you have already said, that's a good one. Like we have to verify what exactly the thing. So let me just say the question to you again. Tomorrow I will solve this question, and you have to come up with still more, many more options. So what is that? You are a new person, you are a trainee, you have been trained and you have been assigned to a director. He's a very good person. He's training you very, very good, 5 stars. In every aspect, he is giving the things. You are an amateur, you are not knowing anything. He is giving all the things needed. By this, like you become so confident that if I work under this director, I'll be like number one. I can learn all the work. Because of some emergency work, the director asked you to come to his house. When you are about to ring the bell, you heard some woman crying. Afterwards, even after entering the house, you heard someone crying in the background. You asked the director, sir, what is that? Like someone is crying, something like that. His answer did not satisfy you. So you as a conscious person, and afterwards you inquired the neighbors. Neighbors told that he is involved in domestic violence, he is beating the wife. And also your colleagues and your subordinates, they also said that yes, at home he is involved in beating wife. His wife is like is not that educated. In this situation, what will you do? Please think it over. You have to come up with more number of options. That is the way to solve a case studies. And I will tell you what is the ideal, what is the best method for you to do in this circumstance. Right? So these are some of the things. Dear students, do you have any doubt with respect to the things which I have taught today?